What are some of your craziest near-death experiences? I'll explain. I work as a millwright for a company that manufactures automation equipment. Today I was working at a bench near the machine shop when my IT guy came in to install my new shop PC, a speedy little unit armed with a P4, 768 megs of RAM, and one hell of a heart. I know, you're jealous. I leave the bench to go and enter my password on the shiny, new piece of tech and have a few words with him about the sad state of affairs. No more than a minute and a half later, I hear a horrible sound of metal hitting something solid, and then what sounded like someone threw the biggest ninja star in the world across the shop. By the time I looked up, it was past us, and as I turned around, it struck and mangled a shelving unit against the far wall. I ran over to make sure the machinist was okay because he was working on the lathe, and I figured out that was where it came from. The lathe is a machine that can turn pieces of metal at over 1,000 rotations per minute. He was fine, but pretty shaken. Turns out the adjustable dead stop at the rear of the lathe came apart, no fault of his own, at a high speed and hit the floor and went merrily on its way. The dead stop is a 4-foot piece of 1.5-inch solid steel bar, not something to be messed with at 100 miles per hour. It was jammed about half an inch deep into reinforced concrete. The worst part was, I followed the path it took and it was directly over the top of the spot on the bench I was working at. I bought a lotto ticket and a big bottle of Jameson's when I got home. Tonight we drink, because we didn't get decapitated today. I was working at a normal boring office job and I needed to come in on a Saturday to get some work done. So I parked in the parking deck and got in the elevator to go down to the first floor. The elevator was sort of old and crappy and I'd seen people working on it on and off all week. I got in and everything went normally until I reached the first floor. As the elevator settles into place, I hear this loud metallic clanging from somewhere far above me, followed by a loud scraping noise that's obviously something sliding down the side of the shaft at freefall speed. During this, the door starts to open and I'm gripped with indecision as to whether I should leap out of the elevator or take my chances where I am. I decide to run for it, but about half a second later my decision is made for me when a large steel panel, maybe about 4 by 6 feet, flashes guillotine-like through the space between the open elevator door and hits the bottom of the shaft with a thunderous crash. And then I step out of the elevator and the doors close like nothing has happened. And of course, it turned out the door I was trying to use was locked on the weekend, so I had to go back up to where I started from. I took the stairs. It turned out later that the guys doing the work had forgotten to refasten some sort of panel on some machinery. If I'd been half a second faster at deciding what I wanted to do, it would have cut me in half and nobody would have found me until Monday morning. In short, almost got cut in half due to crappy elevator maintenance. I kind of feel like this was your final destination near-death experience and that you should have been very careful going forward. Except, hold on, this post was 12 years ago. No more answers from the author on the story since then. Oh, thank God, he's writing on other things. He's fine, folks. He's fine. 2 weeks ago, I had some weird chest pains and decided to walk to the ER. It got worse as I went, but by then I was pretty close to the place, so I just kept going. I walked in the automatic door and within 4 seconds, I hit the floor. Heart attack. This was at 2:30 in the morning in this dinky little town. If the heart attack had hit me a minute sooner, I would have laid out on the sidewalk and died. They tell me that my heart stopped for 3 minutes. I don't think it would have started up again without the compressions and shock paddles and whatever else they did. If you're going to have a heart attack, I highly recommend having it right there in the ER. We had a loss of depth control on my submarine while in some heavy seas and in not-so-friendly territory. Sunk out very deep and had to use the emergency blow to regain control of depth. One of the dudes in sonar with me started to cry. It was some spooky stuff. Funny enough, the same thing happened to our boat on the east coast. We were somewhere where we weren't supposed to be, and the captain thought that since it was slow and nothing was going on, why not run some drills in prep for ORSA, Operational Safety Exams for the layman's, when we get back. We ran the loss of propulsion drill, and the nuclear engineers couldn't get it back up and running, and something broke. We sank out way past recommended depth, and we had to emergency blow to get back up, and we barely made it back to the surface before emptying the tanks. The sonar sup on watch lost it and had to be relieved. I was fire control technician on watch at the time, and nothing is worse than coming up to the surface and not knowing what's out there that could hit us. This happened just today, actually. I'm visiting my eldest brother for the week, and while he's at work today, I decide to go on a bike ride to see the neighborhood. I find his bike and take it and start going down the road. The roads are mostly flat, and I soon find myself going down a side road with lots of bushes and trees on both sides. Then the road starts to become a downwards incline. Not too steep, but steep enough where I'm gaining speed without pedaling. I'm going now at a decent pace and remember that it's an unknown road and I don't have a bike helmet on. I should slow down. The brakes don't seem to be working. Moving faster now. Down the hill, getting steeper. Wait, what the heck? I've got no brakes. At this point in time, I'm really moving fast. I was pretty much going about as fast as someone that was biking all out under their own power on a flat piece of land could go. I look ahead to see if this hill has any plans to flatten out before something bad happens to me. This is a problem. The road ahead, about 25 meters away, takes a sharp turn left. I can't see past that turn, but I can see that it's a downward slope the entire way. I had a choice. Take the turn blind and hope that the road is safe and the hill flattens out, or do something right now to stop my bike before I get to the unknown turn ahead. I decide to do the latter and aimed for someone's bushes on the side of the road. About 5 seconds later, I slammed into the bushes, moving about, 20 miles per hour? It was a lot more painful than I thought it would be. I got the wind knocked out of me and was covered with a dozen cuts or so, some of them bleeding through my clothes. As I limp over to drag my bike out of this yard, I get a chance to see what's around that blind corner. After the turn, there was about 10 feet of street and then a stop sign. It then crossed a 4-lane frontage road that was full of cars moving in either direction at high speeds. If I didn't decide to crash into the bushes, I would have taken the turn and found myself moving 20 miles per hour right across 4 lanes of busy traffic. In short, 6 hours ago I made a split-second decision which ended up saving me from slamming into traffic on a bike. I was urban exploring at an abandoned jail during my high school years. We were on the 3rd floor of a building and there was a catwalk that was behind and between the cells, which we decided to explore. Below us was a drop of about 40 to 50 feet to a bunch of mangled metal and concrete in the basement. As I was walking on the catwalk, it rotted off the boards and began to fall downwards. My friend was behind me, luckily, and grabbed me by my hoodie while jumping on the seesawing catwalk. I still owe him to this day, because I'm sure I would have been impaled on something had the fall not killed me. Needless to say, my stupidity would have killed me. I make plastic injection mold, which produce plastic parts for the automotive industry. When two halves are together, they can get pretty huge when making things like the inside door panels or truck grills and whatnot. Anyway, I was once operating an overhead crane trying to separate two halves of the mold, each half being about 10,000 pounds. I was leaning in close because when separating these, the top tends to get cocked, and you need to adjust the position of the crane in small increments to get the weight to come off just right. I was constantly needing to adjust in one direction, which after about 5 seconds started raising some red flags in my head, since that's a pretty extreme adjustment. I looked up and someone was operating the other overhead crane and without knowing it was pushing mine out of position. In the span of time it took me to yell, "Hey, frick, stop!" My crane had been pushed far enough that my load basically sprung off the steel horses and shot towards me. I got super lucky, and the load ended up balanced on the single horse. A few inches either way and it would have fallen off and I might not be here today. It was a pretty scary day. That's a smoke break, right? That's a finish setting down that load and go for a drag outside while exercising a 1,000-yard stare kind of incident at work. No, I don't smoke, but I think I might if that happened. I climb towers in the US, cell phone towers more specifically. As a climber, we're equipped with various safety devices. For climbing a tower, we have a safety climb, which attaches to a metal wire running the length of the ladder. For free climbing, outside of the ladder, we have 2 pelican hooks, or PFAs, personal fall arrest systems, which are basically 2 huge carabiners hooked onto a fabric lanyard that's attached to our climbing belt. On top of all of this, we have a number of adjustable lanyards, pelican hooks, and carabiners to make working as safe and smooth as possible. One day, in particular, I was working on a tower in California, roughly 350 feet tall, give or take. Anyone who's been mountain climbing in California knows that it can get windy. Where are the most cell sites located? On mountaintops. Better reception, more range, but not fun to work on when bad weather rolls in. This was one of those days where the weather chose to work against us. We arrived, and as soon as the truck door was flung open wildly by the wind, we knew the day was going to be horrible. There's not much you can do aside from put on all the layers of clothing you have and hope it's enough. I suit up, throw my belt on, and stand at the bottom of the ladder, looking up for a moment and listening to the wind howl as it passes through the various tubes and slots of metal situated on the tower. It's a haunting sound. So we climbed the tower, and about 3 hours into work, I moved to work on a new antenna. I do the usual, double-check all of my connections and slowly put my weight on said connections so that I can let go of the tower and use my hands to work if I have to. No problem. I sit there working, shifting my weight, occasionally just doing the job. The wind is pulling the tears from my eyes, and my windbreaker hoodie has been flapping like a hummingbird wing in my ears for the entire day. One little shift of my weight and the world drops out from under me. My foot slips. I grab the tower, but I'm falling. I've never fallen so slow. I could clearly see a handhold coming up and remember having the time to consciously think, I can grab this, before my hip slammed into it and my body slid over the side of the metal. I was caught by my armpit. As traumatic as it was, I don't remember much after catching myself. I sat there stunned for a minute and looked up to where I was working. I would guess that I fell roughly 15 to 20 feet. I saw the crossbeam that I was tied off to bent slightly, and when I climbed back to finish the job, I noticed that the nut on the bolt holding the piece in was missing. I'm guessing it de-threaded over time, or maybe it was never there to begin with. More than anything, I remember just being embarrassed. I never told my co-workers. In short, a faulty bolt connection almost killed me on a cell tower. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out Easy Mode, also linked below, and subscribe. I almost drowned in a canoe when I was 9. I was under the water for about 30 seconds before my cousin's boyfriend, now husband, pulled me out. I had Kawasaki syndrome when I was 2, and none of the doctors knew what it was, but one random newly graduated med student came in and diagnosed it right away. I don't know who it was, but he saved my life. My brother came extremely close to death. He was 3 and I was 5. We were at our neighbors playing. I was at their pond with my friend and her mum, and my brother was riding a tricycle in the driveway. Their grandpa was a truck driver and had the cab of his truck on the driveway. All of a sudden, I hear my friend's mum screaming and running towards the truck. She's waving her hands and yelling, "Stop!" over and over again. My brother was riding the trike in front of the truck and Grandpa didn't see him. He started it and knocked my brother off the trike and underneath the truck. The Grandpa saw the mum and stopped. My brother had hit his head on something underneath the truck and had tire marks on his head and arm where the tires brushed up against him. If the Grandpa hadn't stopped exactly when he did, my brother would have been run over. The Grandpa stopped driving trucks after this happened because he felt so bad. He had to change his career after that? That's a profound change. I know the majority of our parents didn't give up driving after the many, many times that their kids got in front of the family sedans on our tricycles and skateboards. I'm a manufacturing manager in Texas. I've seen a machinist working on an automated lathe with his shirt untucked. The lathe malfunctioned and started operating when he was working on it, and caught his shirt. He was pulled up and over for about 20 times until someone could shut it off. He can't walk anymore. When I was about 4, I was waiting in the line to jump into the ocean off a dock in Jakarta, when a little rude French boy jumped into the water right as I was supposed to. He ended up jumping on a man-of-war jellyfish and nearly died. If that had been me, I was so little I would have died. During officer training in the German army, my class and I received training on our assigned weapon systems. I'm with Armored Recon, so mine is, or was, since it's been phased out a few years ago, an 8-wheeled reconnaissance tank with a 20mm machine cannon for self-defense. This is some serious hardware, dealing out 20mm high-explosive rounds with a kill radius of 6 meters at 1,000 rounds per minute. They're pin-fired and the primer needs about 70 newtons, that's 70 kilograms of force, to ignite the charge. That will become important later on. So I'm tasked with loading the gun for some live firing as fast as possible, since we're already behind schedule. Now, the ammo comes in 25-round belts, which have to be linked and fed into the storage compartment inside the turret. This process is done by one person sitting inside. There are special tools to pull out single rounds, overlap 2 links and connect the 2 belts with the spare round. These have to be used for safety reasons. I, being young and dumb but ambitious, of course choose to ignore all safety precautions because it's faster that way. The high-explosive storage compartment is at about knee level in front of me and holds about 300 rounds. I'm trying to link the final belt to the snake-like chain of death half a meter away from my crotch, but the round I have to pull out is stuck in the link. I apply all my strength, but this is stuck, man. For a second, I contemplate using the special pair of pliers designed exactly for this task. Nah. I pull again with the belt against my shins, pulling the round towards me for maximum leverage. it suddenly comes free. Unable to stop the motion because of the surprise, my hand and ammo combo move between my legs at the speed of sound. No, it didn't hit my Johnson, but the base of the round, where the primer is, struck the edge of the steel storage container under the seat I was occupying, with the loudest frickin' clang I have ever heard. I pause. Silence. 5 seconds pass. 10 seconds pass. A bead of sweat rolls down my chin. I finally managed to move my arm again. I look at the base of the round. Around 2 millimeters, that's 1/10 of an inch, next to the primer, is a huge fricking dent, twice that deep. What I'm trying to say is, a bit more to the left and that thing would have gone off in my hand, sending shrapnel and burning powder right into the ammo storage, where 299 rounds of live 20mm high explosive ammo was sitting. That, combined with the 500 liters of diesel fuel in the tank, would have provided quite a spectacular fireworks display. I presume anyway. Maybe they would have found my teeth. Terribly sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but your son is dead because he was a freaking moron. There are more instances where I almost died, getting shot, squashed, or decapitated during training, but this one was the one with the most profound impact on me. In short, almost blew myself, 300 rounds of 20mm ammo, and a recon tank up due to stupidity. And that, sweet viewers, is why the narrator isn't in any of the armed forces. I wouldn't even make it to contact with the enemy, because something like this would have happened the first time I was allowed near anything more dangerous than a wooden practice rifle. Several years back, I worked as an electrician's apprentice. We were rewiring an industrial printing press. If you haven't seen one, those things are massive. This one was 30 feet tall and about 200 feet long. On this particular day, we had to rewire a portion of the master control unit. This involved pulling out like 300 feet of wire and then rerunning it. The guy who I apprenticed under told me that the power had been locked out of that side of the press. This is for safety because you can't have people working around live wires that run industrial currents. This is where my whole day started to turn to crap. Being an apprentice, I said, okay, and trusted him. Note to self, never trust someone again when your life is on the line. So here I am on top of the printing press pulling this wire out. They run the wires in a gutter-like thing to keep all of the wiring neat and out of the way. The gutter was run over the press and then down to the master control unit. So I'm pulling the wire and having a pretty good day so far. Then the wire gets stuck on something. Okay, I'll just put some oomph into it. It didn't budge. Now, let me clarify exactly where I am right now. The press is 30 feet high, and it has a catwalk around the top of it to access certain parts of it for service. The catwalk has a standard metal handrail, so people don't fall off it. I, being the naturally smart person that I am, have one foot on top of the press, and the other foot is on the handrail. I'm standing precariously on these about 30 to 35 feet in the air, and I'm reaching up to this metal gutter and pulling wires that are stuck. Well damn, this sucks. A light bulb goes off in my head. Screw it, I'll just cut it and pull this half out right here. And this is where the defecation hits the ventilation. So it turns out the guy I apprenticed under was either A, incompetent, or B, a jerk of mythic proportions. So here I am, precariously balanced, and I cut the wire. I can only describe what happened next as a dream. Time literally slowed down like in a movie. Slow motion. Zzz. I can feel my body buzzing from the shock, yet I don't actually feel pain. The next thing I know, I'm looking at the sky. It's so pretty. I see the clouds, weird but pretty. I stare at the sky for a few minutes. Then it turns into the Far Side comic of Custard's Last Sight. Basically, I see a circle of heads all around me and people look scared. Well, that's kinda weird. I sit up and let me tell you, I felt frickin' great. So full of energy. No pun intended. I've never felt better. Everyone is slack-jawed and staring, and no one says anything. After a few minutes, I look up at the top of the press where I was. Something tickles my memory. Why is that familiar? Slowly it dawns on me that I was doing something up there recently. Another minute passes and it all becomes clear. The buzzing, the body shaking, the sky. I look down and my hands are all bloody, and so is my leg. Finally, one of the guys says, "Holy frick, dude." Yes, my good man, holy frick indeed. It turns out that after getting hit with 480 volts, I fell backwards 30 feet, bounced off a 6-foot steel cabinet, landed on my head, and flopped onto my back. I'm bleeding from where the electricity went in and from where it shot out, as well as several cuts from the cabinet. The ambulance arrives, I go to the hospital, only the few minor cuts, no real damage. Doctors and paramedics couldn't believe I wasn't dead from the electricity or the fall. Good times. In short, got electrocuted, fell 35 feet onto my head, and walked away with only a few minor cuts. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.